The grand mating hall of Blackthorn Keep had never felt so cold. Hundreds of wolves filled the stone chamber, their voices low but sharp with anticipation. Candlelight flickered across silk gowns and polished armor as the most powerful packs in the kingdom gathered to witness their Alpha King finally choose his Luna. Tonight was meant to be a night of strength and certainty. Liora Vale knelt near the back of the hall, as far from the center circle as she could manage. She wore a simple dark dress, the kind meant to help her disappear. She had not wanted to come. The court had summoned her, and refusing an Alpha King's command was not something a wolfless widow could afford. So she knelt quietly, hands folded, and tried to make herself as small as possible. People still moved away from her. Noble she-wolves whispered behind jeweled hands as they passed. A widow's grief has no place in a mating hall. She carries death with her. The king's wolf is already weak. Why invite more misfortune? Liora kept her gaze lowered. She had buried her husband less than a year ago. She did not want power. She did not want attention. She only wanted to be left alone with her grief. On the raised dais, Alpha King Thorne Blackthorn stood tall in black and silver. His expression was cold, but his body was tense. Only he knew how close his wolf was to failing. If his wolf died without finding its true mate, the pack bonds would begin to fracture. The court would force him to take a Luna immediately, whether his wolf accepted her or not. This ceremony was meant to be his last chance. Lady Vespera stood at the front of the circle, beautiful and composed in deep red. She smiled with quiet confidence. Everyone expected the king to choose her. The elder counselor stepped forward to begin the ceremony. His voice carried across the hall. Any she-wolf who believes herself worthy may enter the circle. The Alpha King will choose under the light of the full moon. Several noble daughters moved gracefully into the circle. Liora remained where she was. She did not move. A low, pained sound suddenly tore from the dais. King Thorne's body jerked. His wolf surged forward without permission. Black fur rippled across his skin as he fought the shift, shame flashing across his face for one brief second before he lost control. His massive black wolf stumbled off the dais and into the hall. The court gasped. The dying wolf did not go to Lady Vespera. It did not go to any of the noble she-wolves waiting in the circle. Instead, it turned and began walking slowly, painfully toward the back of the hall where Liora knelt. Its legs trembled with every step. Its breathing was ragged and uneven. Still, it kept moving forward until it finally reached her. The great black wolf, the harsh, labored sound softened into something calmer, as if her presence alone gave it relief. The entire court fell into stunned silence. Lady Vespera's voice cut through the stillness, sharp and controlled. "This is unacceptable," she said clearly. "A grief-stained widow has no place in this hall. She has done something to the king's wolf. Guards, remove her until we understand what she has done." Two guards immediately stepped forward. Liora slowly lifted her head. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "I did not step into the circle," she said. "I did not ask your wolf to come to me." The guards hesitated for a moment, but Lady Vespera's voice rose again, colder this time. "Take her. If she has weakened the Alpha King's wolf, she must face the Moonblood trial." King Thorne had forced the shift back, though the effort left him breathing hard. He stared at his own wolf curled at Liora's feet. Disbelief and something close to fear in his eyes. He could feel the bond between them weak, but pulling toward the widow with a strength it had never shown for anyone else. He stepped down from the dais. His voice was low when he finally spoke. "My wolf does not kneel to mistakes." He looked at Liora, then at the court. He chose her. In front of all of you. Lady Vespera's expression tightened. She turned to the elder counselor. "The wolf is clearly compromised. The widow must be tested before this goes any further. Begin the Moonblood trial." The elder counselor looked between the king, the dying wolf, and Liora. After a tense moment, he nodded. Before the guards could move again, the ancient mating circle carved into the stone floor, beneath Liora's knees, suddenly began to glow. Soft silver light rose from the old runes, spreading outward in a perfect circle around her. She had never stepped into it. She had never been called forward. Yet the circle had chosen her anyway. Gasps filled the hall. The elder counselor stared at the glowing marks in shock. Lady Vespera's face went pale. King Thorne stood frozen, golden eyes locked on the light surrounding the grieving widow. His dying wolf pressed closer to her legs and let out a low, content sound, its breathing remaining steady only while it stayed near her. Liora looked down at the glowing circle beneath her knees, then slowly raised her eyes to the Alpha King. The court had come to watch him choose his Luna. Instead, the old Moon Law had chosen for him, and it had chosen the one woman no one believed could be chosen at all. The silver light beneath Liora's knees slowly faded, but the tension in the mating hall remained sharp and dangerous. No one moved to clear the court. Nobles, guards, and rival she-wolves stayed where they stood, staring at the grieving widow with open suspicion. Lady Vespera stepped forward, her crimson gown flowing gracefully as she addressed the entire hall. Her voice was calm, yet every word carried venom. "By old Moon Law," she declared, "I invoke the moon. Blood trial." A wave of shock moved through the nobles. Vespera continued, her tone smooth but cutting. "A grief-stained widow and a wolfless curse cannot be allowed to influence the Alpha King's dying wolf. If she is innocent, the moon will spare her. But if she has weakened our king through some dead mate's shadow, then the court must see it. I demand the trial begin at once." The elder counselor stepped forward. His voice was heavy as he spoke. "Once the old moon bell rings, old Moon Law outranks even the Alpha King. The moon blood trial cannot be refused." As if answering his words, the ancient moon bell high above the hall began to ring on its own. Its deep, resonant tone rolled through the chamber, sealing Liora's fate. Several nobles gasped. The trial had begun. 2 guards moved toward Liora. Thorne's black wolf immediately reacted. It struggled to rise on trembling legs and growled, low and threatening. Its breathing, which had been steady only while it stayed near Liora, turned harsh and ragged the moment the guards approached. The wolf pressed closer to her, as if her presence alone was keeping it from collapsing. Thorne stepped in front of Liora without hesitation. "The first hand that touches her answers to me," he said, voice cold and clear across the hall. The guards froze. Lady Vespera's expression remained composed, but her eyes were sharp. "Your Majesty, you are being swayed by a dying wolf and a woman who carries death with her. A wolfless widow cannot be Luna. If you continue to shield her, the Pax will see that you have been compromised." She took a graceful step closer to the wolf, as if to prove she was not afraid. The dying black wolf lifted its head with visible effort and growled at her, weak but unmistakable. Vespera stopped. For a brief second, something close to unease crossed her face before she smoothed it away. Thorne's voice rang out again, louder this time. "My wolf is dying, and she is the only reason it is still breathing. You call her wolfless, yet my wolf found life at her knees." Murmurs spread through the court. He is choosing a wolfless widow over the Pax. Vespera's house will not forgive this. The Alpha King has been compromised. Liora stood behind Thorne, her spine straight despite the humiliation burning in her chest. She had not asked for any of this. She had come because she was commanded to, and now she was being judged as though she had committed a crime. She stepped slightly to the side so she could be seen and spoke clearly. "I did not step into the circle," she said. "I did not call your king's wolf. I buried one mate. I did not come here to steal another." Her voice did not shake. Several nobles looked away. Lady Vespera's voice turned colder. "Your grief is a curse, widow. It has already taken one mate from you. Now it seeks to take our king's wolf as well. You must face the moon blood trial before you destroy what remains of the Alpha line. As the Elder Counselor prepared to confirm the trial, a faint silver crescent suddenly burned beneath the sleeve of Leora's widow dress. The mark glowed softly for a few seconds before fading, but not before several people nearby saw it. Whispers erupted again. The Elder Counselor's face was grim. The moon blood trial has been invoked. At dawn, Liora Vale will stand before the moon blood altar. If she fails, she will be branded a wolf-thief. If the king's wolf dies before the trial ends, her life will answer for it. Lady Vespera gave a small, satisfied nod. Thorne's wolf pressed harder against Leora's legs, its breathing growing steadier the moment she remained close. Liora reached down without thinking and let her fingers rest lightly on its fur. The wolf exhaled, long and shaky, as if her touch alone gave it strength. Thorne looked at Liora, then at the court that was already turning against her. He could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. Protecting her here meant standing against half the noble houses and the temple itself. But when he looked at his dying wolf breathing only because it stayed near her, he knew he could not turn away. He turned back to the Elder Counselor, golden eyes hard. "The trial will proceed," he said, "but she will not face it alone, and if any harm comes to her before the moon has spoken, I will answer it myself." Lady Vespera's smile was small and cold. "Then, let the moon decide, Your Majesty. At dawn, the widow will stand before the altar. If she is found guilty—" She paused, letting the silence speak for her. "Blackthorn Keep will bury its second mate before sunrise." The old moon bell rang once more, final and heavy. Liora stood in the center of the hall. The Alpha King's dying wolf pressed against her legs, while the entire court looked at her as though she had already been condemned. The moon had chosen her, but the court had just put her on trial for it. The mating hall had mostly emptied, but the weight of judgment remained. Liora stood near the darkened circle, one hand resting lightly on the head of Thorne's dying wolf. The massive black beast had not left her side. Its breathing was steady only while it stayed close to her. The moment she shifted even a step away, its sides would begin to heave again. She had survived burying one mate. She had never imagined the court would accuse her of killing another simply because a dying wolf had found comfort at her knees. Thorne stood beside her, his golden eyes heavy with guilt. He had not personally summoned her to the hall, but it had been done in his name. His court, his law, and now they were using all of it to condemn her. Liora spoke quietly, her voice steady despite the exhaustion in her body. "I buried one mate. Do not make his grave a weapon against me." Thorne looked at her. The words landed sharply. Before he could answer, the Elder Counselor returned with 2 moon guards. Lady Vespera walked beside them, her crimson robes flowing gracefully. She stopped at a respectful distance, but her voice carried clearly. "Your Majesty," she said smoothly, "the widow must be taken to the moon chamber before dawn for purification. The moon blood trial requires it. She cannot remain near your wolf any longer." Thorne's expression hardened. "She stays with me." The elder's voice was cold and final. "Mercy has no place once the bell has rung. Old Moon Law does not ask whether she is innocent. It asks whether she survives." Lady Vespera stepped forward slightly, her tone still elegant, but every word laced with poison. "One mate has already died beside her," she said. "Shall we allow the king's wolf to be the second? Widow grief does not heal wolves, Your Majesty. It buries them." Leora's spine straightened. She met Vespera's gaze without flinching. "My grief did not call your king's wolf," she said quietly. "His pain did." Vespera's smile was small and cold. "Then let the moon decide which of you is telling the truth." As she spoke, her thumb brushed lightly over the moon-silver ring hidden beneath her glove. A heartbeat later, the old moon bell high above the hall rang again far too early. The sound rolled through the stone like a verdict. The Elder Counselor's face tightened. "The moon has answered," he said. "The trial has begun." At the far end of the corridor, the heavy doors of the moon chamber slowly creaked open. Cold silver light spilled out and stretched forward, reaching toward Liora like invisible fingers. The light moved across the floor until it touched the hem of her widow's dress. Liora's silver crescent mark suddenly burned black beneath her sleeve. She pressed her hand against it, pain flashing across her face, but she did not cry out. Thorne's wolf let out a broken whine. Its breathing turned shallow and ragged the moment the moon chamber opened. When two moon guards stepped toward Liora, the wolf tried to rise but collapsed against her legs instead, one paw weakly reaching for her. Liora placed her hand on its fur without hesitation. "Do not punish him for coming to me," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "He is dying. If I am guilty of anything, it is of not pushing away a creature that needed breath." Thorne stepped in front of her, his body blocking the guards. "She goes," he said, voice rough, "but I go with her." The elder shook his head. "That is not permitted. Once the moon chamber opens, the accused belongs to the trial." Lady Vespera's voice was soft, almost gentle. "You cannot protect her from the moon, Your Majesty, and you cannot protect your wolf from what she has brought into your hall." The silver light from the moon chamber stretched further, curling around Liora's feet like a hand trying to pull her forward. Her crescent mark burned hotter beneath her sleeve. Thorne's wolf suddenly stopped breathing. For one terrifying second, there was only silence. Then the beast gasped, its body trembling violently against Liora's legs. It only calmed again when she remained exactly where she stood. The elder looked at Thorne with cold finality. "The trial has begun," he said. "The widow must enter the moon chamber now." Thorne looked at Liora. His golden eyes were filled with guilt, anger, and something deeper, a growing refusal to let the court decide her fate without him. He turned back to the elder. "Then I will stand inside it with her." The silver light from the moon chamber reached forward once more, brushing against the edge of Liora's dress like it was already claiming her. And for the first time that night, Thorne realized the court was no longer waiting for dawn. It had already come for the widow. The silver light from the moon chamber reached forward like something alive and hungry. It did not simply glow, it moved with intention. Cold, fluid strands of light curled slowly around Liora's ankles, then slid upward, wrapping around the hem of her widow dress like living chains. The light felt ancient and patient, as if it had been waiting in the dark for this exact moment for her. Liora stood frozen in place. The silver crescent mark beneath her sleeve burned hotter with every passing second, responding to the chamber as though it recognized something inside her. She could feel it pulling not only at her body, but at the grief she had carried since the day she buried her husband. The light seemed to know exactly where that wound lived. Lady Vespera's voice drifted forward one final time before the heavy doors could close. She stood at the edge of the corridor, her posture graceful, her expression almost serene, but her words were sharp enough to cut. "If she is truly innocent, Your Majesty, the chamber will return her whole. If not, then at least we will finally see what survives when grief has no one left to hide behind." The doors slammed shut with a deep, echoing finality. The moment the chamber sealed, the silver light surged forward with new force. It wrapped around Liora's wrist and pulled hard. She gasped and dug her heels into the stone floor, refusing to be dragged forward alone. At the same time, she tightened her grip on Thorne's hand, holding on with everything she had left. Thorne did not hesitate. He stepped directly into the silver light before it could pull her any farther. The moment his body entered the glow, the light reacted violently. It bit into his chest and arms like frost and fire combined, tearing at the fragile bond inside him. Pain exploded through his ribs as his dying wolf collapsed outside the chamber. He felt it clearly, the sudden break in the wolf's breath, the heavy thud of its body hitting the stone, and the sharp, tearing sensation inside his own chest as the chamber tried to sever Liora from the only thing keeping the wolf alive. Thorne's knees nearly buckled, but he stayed on his feet. He moved in front of Liora, using his body to shield her from the worst of the light's pull. The silver glow burned across his skin, but he refused to step back. Leora's voice came out strained but steady. "You don't have to do this." Thorne turned his head just enough to meet her eyes. His golden gaze was filled with pain, guilt, and something far more dangerous resolve. "I brought you into this hall," he said through gritted teeth. "They summoned you in my name. They condemned you under my law. I will not abandon you to the punishment my court created." The silver light surged again, wrapping tighter around Leora's arms. It tried to yank her toward the altar at the center of the chamber, while simultaneously pulling at her hand, attempting to separate her fingers from Thorne's. The chamber was not only testing her, it was trying to isolate her grief, as if her mourning itself was something that needed to be dragged out and judged. On the dark stone floor, glowing words began to appear beneath their feet. "Widow, curse, wolf-thief." Liora stared at the words without lowering her head. Instead of shrinking from them, she lifted her chin and stared directly at the accusation the chamber had written for her. She refused to kneel, even as the light tried to force her down. "I buried one mate," she said, voice clear despite the pain. "I will not let this chamber make his grave into my guilt." The silver light tightened around her wrist in response, as if angered by her resistance. It pulled harder, dragging her another full step toward the altar. Thorne was pulled with her, his boots scraping against the stone as he refused to release her hand. Outside the sealed chamber, his wolf let out one last, broken sound before its breathing stopped completely for one terrifying second. Inside, the silver light continued to reach for Liora like it had finally found what it came to take. Thorne held her hand with both of his now. His body braced against the violent pull. The light was burning into his skin, but he did not let go. Sweat ran down his temple as he fought to keep her beside him. Liora looked at him through the haze of pain. Her free hand gripped his tighter. "Don't let go," she said. "I won't," Thorne answered. The chamber's light wrapped even tighter around her, trying to drag both her body and the hidden grief it seemed to recognize. It pulled at the crescent mark beneath her sleeve, as if trying to rip it free. The words on the floor burned brighter, repeating themselves like a verdict. "Widow, curse, wolf-thief." Liora stared at them without fear. "I buried one mate," she said again, louder this time. "I will not let this chamber make his grave into my guilt." Thorne felt something crack inside his chest, not from the light, but from the weight of her words. He had spent months trying to save his wolf while following the rules of his court. Now, standing inside this ancient chamber, he was willing to break every one of them for the woman his wolf had chosen. The silver light suddenly flared violently and yanked Liora forward another step. Thorne was dragged with her, his boots sliding across the stone. He planted his feet and pulled back with everything he had, refusing to let the chamber separate them. Outside the sealed doors, his dying wolf lay motionless on the cold stone. Its breathing had not returned. Inside, the moon chamber continued to reach for Liora, pulling her closer to the altar, as if it had been waiting not to test her, but to claim her. Thorne looked at her, golden eyes burning with pain and determination. "Stay with me," he said. Liora met his gaze, exhausted, but unbroken. "I'm still here." The silver light tightened once more, and the chamber pulled them both another step toward the altar. The silver light inside the moon chamber had become relentless. It wrapped around Leora's arms and waist like living chains, pulling her toward the altar with increasing force. Every step she took backward was immediately countered by another surge forward. The glowing words on the floor burned brighter with each passing second. "Widow, curse, wolf-thief." Liora dug her heels into the stone and gripped Thorne's hand with everything she had left. Her silver crescent mark burned black beneath her sleeve, sending sharp pulses of pain up her arm. She refused to kneel. She refused to let the chamber drag her forward without resistance. Thorne stood braced in front of her, his body taking the worst of the pull. The light was burning into his skin, but he did not release her. Sweat ran down his temple as he fought to keep them both in place. Outside the sealed chamber, his dying wolf had not moved since it collapsed. Through the bond, Thorne could feel its life slipping away. With every second, Liora was being pulled deeper into the trial. Leora's breathing was ragged. She looked at the words on the floor and spoke through clenched teeth. "I buried one mate," she said. "I will not let this chamber make his grave into my guilt." The silver light tightened around her in response, as if angered by her resistance. It yanked her forward another step. Thorne was dragged with her, his boots sliding across the stone. He tightened his grip on her hand until his knuckles turned white. "Stay with me," he said, voice rough with effort. "I'm trying," Liora answered. Her voice was strained, but there was still strength in it. "But it wants me alone." The chamber seemed to hear her. The silver light suddenly surged with new violence. It wrapped around Leora's wrist and pulled hard, trying to rip her hand from Thorne's. At the same time, it reached for the crescent mark beneath her sleeve, as if trying to drag the hidden part of her into the light. Liora gasped and stumbled. Thorne caught her before she could fall, pulling her back against his chest. For a brief moment, the light loosened its grip on her body, but it immediately began pulling at her grief instead, as if it could sense the wound she carried and was trying to expose it. Thorne felt it through their growing connection. He could feel the chamber trying to peel away the layers of her mourning, using it as proof of guilt. He looked down at her, golden eyes burning. "They are not testing your innocence," he said. "They are judging your grief." Liora met his gaze. Her breathing was shallow, but her voice remained steady. "Then they will be disappointed," she said, "because I will not let them turn my loss into a crime." The silver light responded by wrapping tighter around her. It pulled her another step toward the altar. Thorne was forced to move with her, his body straining against the force. Outside the chamber, his wolf let out one last, broken sound before its breathing grew dangerously shallow again. Thorne felt the sudden drop through the bond. Pain tore through his chest so sharply that he nearly dropped to one knee. He only stayed upright because he was still holding on to Liora. "They are killing it," he said through gritted teeth, "by trying to separate you from me. They are killing my wolf." Liora looked at him, pain flashing across her face. "Then don't let them separate us." Thorne looked down at their joined hands. The silver light was still trying to pry their fingers apart. He tightened his grip and stepped even closer to her, using his body to block as much of the light as he could. "I won't," he said. The chamber seemed to grow frustrated. The silver light suddenly flared and wrapped around both of them at once, trying to drag them toward the altar together. The glowing words on the floor repeated themselves, burning brighter than before. "Widow. Curse. Wolf-thief." Liora stared at the words without looking away. "I am a widow," she said quietly. "I am not a curse, and I am not a thief." The light tightened in response, pulling harder. Thorne felt his wolf's heartbeat falter again outside the chamber. The bond inside him was tearing. Every second they remained in this struggle, his wolf was getting weaker. He looked at Liora, and for the first time, he let the full weight of his fear show. "If we stay like this," he said, "my wolf will die before the trial ends." Liora was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice low but clear. "Then we stop fighting the chamber's pull and face what it wants to show us." Thorne studied her face. She was exhausted, in pain, and still standing with dignity. He could see the fear in her eyes, but there was no surrender. He gave a small nod. Together, they stopped resisting the silverlight's pull. The moment they stopped fighting, the chamber changed. The silver light no longer yanked at them violently. Instead, it guided them forward slowly, deliberately toward the altar. The glowing words on the floor followed them, repeating over and over, "Widow. Curse. Wolf-thief." As they reached the center of the chamber, The light began to take shape in front of them. It formed the image of a man lying on the ground, a memory given form. Leora's dead husband. Leora's breath caught. Thorne felt her hand tremble in his. The silver image showed her husband's final moments, the moment he had died protecting something. The image was unclear, but the pain in it was unmistakable. Leora's voice came out barely above a whisper. He died protecting the bond I was never allowed to have. The silver light around them pulsed once, as if acknowledging her words. Then, the image changed. It showed a much younger Thorne, standing beside his wounded wolf on a snowy night. A girl, young Liora, was reaching toward the dying beast. Silver light moved from the wolf into her back as she took the wound into herself. Thorne's breath stopped. He remembered. The silver light showed him the promise he had made that night, the promise the priests had later erased from his mind. He had promised to protect her, and he had broken that promise the moment he allowed the court to sever her wings. The silver light around them suddenly tightened again, pulling Liora the final few steps toward the altar. This time, it was stronger than before. Thorne held on with everything he had left. Outside the sealed chamber, his dying wolf stopped breathing once more, and inside, the moon chamber continued to pull the widow closer, as if it had finally found what it had been waiting to judge. The silver vision slowly faded from the center of the moon chamber, but the weight of what they had seen remained. Thorne stood frozen, still holding Leora's hand. His golden eyes were unfocused, as if he was still seeing the memory that had just played out before them, the night a young girl had taken a fatal wound from his dying wolf into her own body, and the promise he had made in return. He had forgotten. They had made him forget. Leora's breathing was uneven. The silver crescent beneath her sleeve continued to burn, and her body trembled from the effort of resisting the chamber's pull. She looked at Thorne, her voice quiet but steady. "You remember now?" Thorne slowly turned his head to look at her. There was pain in his eyes, raw, heavy guilt that had been buried for years and was now rising all at once. "I promised," he said, voice rough. "I promised I would protect you." Liora gave a small, tired nod. "You did. And then they took that promise from you." The silver light around them suddenly surged again, as if angered by their conversation. It wrapped tighter around Leora's waist and pulled hard, dragging her another step toward the altar. Thorne was pulled with her, his boots scraping against the stone. He tightened his grip on her hand and pulled back with everything he had. The chamber responded by intensifying its judgment. The glowing words on the floor repeated themselves over and over, burning brighter each time. "Widow. Curse. Wolf-thief." Liora stared at the words without looking away, her free hand pressed against her chest, where the old grief still lived. "I am a widow," she said, voice clear despite the strain. "I am not a curse, and I am not a thief." The silver light tightened around her in response, as if trying to force her to accept the accusation. It pulled at the crescent mark beneath her sleeve, as though trying to drag the hidden part of her into the light for judgment. Thorne felt his wolf stop breathing again outside the chamber. Pain tore through his chest so sharply that he nearly dropped to one knee. He only stayed upright because he was still holding on to Liora. Through the bond, he could feel his wolf's life slipping away with every second they remained trapped in this struggle. He looked at Liora, golden eyes filled with pain and determination. "If we stay like this, my wolf will die," he said. "But if I let them take you, I will lose you too." Liora met his gaze. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Then stop letting them choose for you." The silver light surged once more and yanked Liora forward. This time, it tried to separate her hand from Thorne's. The light wrapped around her wrist and pulled hard, attempting to break their connection. Liora refused to let go. She gripped Thorne's hand tighter and dug her heels into the stone. Thorne felt something shift inside him. For years, he had followed the rules of his court. He had listened to the elders. He had allowed the temple to guide him, and because of that, He had nearly destroyed the one person his wolf had been trying to reach all along. He was done following their rules. He stepped fully in front of Liora and faced the silver light directly. His voice was low but carried through the chamber. "Enough." The silver light hesitated for a brief second, as if surprised by his defiance. Thorne continued, his voice growing stronger. "You want to judge her? Then judge me too, because I am the one who let this happen. I am the one who forgot, and I am the one who will not let you take her from me again." The chamber responded violently. The silver light exploded outward and wrapped around both of them, trying to drag them toward the altar at the same time. The glowing words on the floor repeated faster and faster. "Widow. Curse. Wolf-thief." Liora's breathing had become shallow. Her body was weakening from the constant pull and the pain radiating from the crescent mark. Still, she refused to let go of Thorne's hand. She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thorne, your wolf." Thorne could feel it. His wolf's heartbeat was slowing dangerously outside the chamber. Every second they fought the light, the wolf was paying the price. He made his choice. He stopped resisting the silver light's pull. Instead, he stepped forward with Liora, walking toward the altar together. The silver light guided them now, no longer fighting as violently but still holding them in its grip. As they reached the center of the chamber, the glowing words on the floor changed. They no longer said, "Widow, curse, wolf-thief." Instead, new words appeared beneath their feet. Bondbreaker, promise-keeper, heart-bearer. Liora stared at the new words in silence. Thorne looked at them, then at her. The chamber was no longer only judging her. It was beginning to judge them both. Liora's voice was quiet when she finally spoke. "It's not just testing me anymore." Thorne nodded slowly. "It's testing whether I will keep the promise I made, or break it again." The silver light around them pulsed once, as if agreeing. Outside the sealed chamber, Thorne's dying wolf took one last, shallow breath. And inside, the moon chamber continued to hold them both in its silver grip, waiting to see what the Alpha King would choose. The silver light inside the moon chamber had changed. It no longer pulled at them with violent force. Instead, it held them in place, surrounding them like a living judgment. The glowing words on the floor had shifted once again. Bondbreaker, promise-keeper, heart-bearer. Liora stood close to Thorne, her body leaning against his for support. Her silver crescent mark still burned beneath her sleeve, but the pain had changed. It was no longer just physical. It felt like the chamber was trying to reach into the deepest part of her grief and drag it into the light. Thorne kept one arm around her waist, refusing to let the light separate them. His golden eyes were fixed on the words beneath their feet. "Bondbreaker," he said quietly, almost to himself. "That's what they called me when they took my memory. They said I had broken the natural order by making a promise to someone outside the bloodlines." Liora looked up at him. Her voice was soft but steady. "You didn't break anything. You made a promise to protect someone who saved your wolf. They broke it for you." Thorne's jaw tightened. He could feel his wolf's life slipping further away outside the chamber. Every second they remained trapped here, the bond grew weaker. The silver light suddenly moved again. This time, it formed a new image in front of them. It showed Thorne as he was now standing in the moon chamber, holding Liora's hand while his wolf lay dying outside. Then the image shifted to show what would happen if he let go. The vision showed Liora being dragged to the altar alone. The silver light wrapped around her like chains. The words, "Widow, curse, wolf, thief," burned across her skin, and outside, his wolf took its final breath. Liora stared at the vision without looking away. "They want you to choose," she said. "Me or your wolf." Thorne's hand tightened around hers. "I will not choose between the two of you." The chamber responded immediately. The silver light surged and wrapped around Liora's body, trying to pull her forward while simultaneously pushing Thorne back. It was testing him, forcing him to decide whether to keep holding on or let her go. Leora's feet slid across the stone as the light dragged her toward the altar. She gripped Thorne's hand harder, refusing to release him. Thorne felt his wolf stop breathing again outside. Pain tore through his chest so sharply that he nearly dropped to his knees. He only stayed upright because he was still holding on to Liora. Through the bond, he could feel his wolf's life hanging by a thread. He looked at Liora, golden eyes filled with pain and determination. "If I let go," he said, "my wolf dies." Liora met his gaze. Her voice was quiet but clear. "And if you don't let go, the chamber may kill me instead." Thorne's expression hardened. "Then we break the rules together." He stepped forward with her, refusing to let the light pull her alone. The silver glow fought against them, but Thorne kept moving, one arm locked around Leora's waist as he dragged them both toward the altar. The glowing words on the floor changed again. This time they formed a single sentence. "Will you keep your promise, or will you break it again?" Thorne stared at the words. The memory of that snowy night returned to him in fragments: the poisoned spear, the dying wolf, the young girl reaching out, and the promise he had made while snow fell around them. He had broken that promise once. He would not break it again. He stopped fighting the chamber's pull and instead walked straight toward the altar with Liora at his side. The silver light parted slightly, as if surprised by his choice. When they reached the center of the chamber, the light gathered above the altar and formed the image of a single silver thread, thin, fragile, and glowing. It stretched between Liora and Thorne, connecting them. Liora stared at the thread. "This is the bond," she whispered. "The one my husband died protecting." Thorne looked at the glowing thread between them. He could feel it now, not just through his wolf, but directly. A fragile, ancient connection that had been buried for years. The silver light pulsed once, and new words appeared on the floor. The bond was never broken, only forgotten. Leora's breath caught. Thorne turned to her. His voice was low and rough with emotion. "I forgot you," he said. "I let them take that night from me. I let them make me believe you were a threat, and because of that, you suffered alone for years." Liora looked at him. There was no anger in her eyes anymore, only quiet acceptance and a trace of something softer. "You were a boy," she said. "They used your fear against you." Thorne shook his head. "I am not a boy anymore, and I will not let them use fear to take you from me again." The silver light around them suddenly tightened. It wrapped around both of them and pulled them closer together, until there was almost no space left between their bodies. The thread connecting them glowed brighter. Then the chamber spoke again, not in words, but through the bond. It showed Thorne one final vision. It showed what would happen if he continued to protect Liora. The court would turn against him. The temple would declare him unfit. Packs would rebel. And his wolf would live. But only if he chose her completely. The vision faded. Thorne looked down at Liora. His voice was quiet but certain. "I choose you." Leora's eyes widened slightly. She had not expected him to say it so directly. Thorne continued, his voice steady. "I will not let them turn your grief into a crime. I will not let them take you from me again. And if the court wants to challenge that, then they will challenge me." The silver light around them pulsed once more, then slowly began to recede. The glowing words on the floor faded. For the first time since they entered the chamber, the moon chamber seemed to grow quiet. Liora looked up at Thorne. Her voice was soft. "Your wolf." Thorne closed his eyes for a moment, reaching through the bond. Outside the chamber, his dying wolf took a slow, shaky breath. It was still weak, but it was breathing again. He opened his eyes and looked at Liora. "It's still alive," he said. "Because of you." Liora gave a small, tired nod. Thorne gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I don't know what will happen when we leave this chamber," he said. But I know this. I will not let them hurt you again. Not while I still draw breath." Liora looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but clear. "Then don't let them turn you into the man they tried to make you." Thorne gave a small nod. "I won't." The silver light in the chamber finally dimmed completely. But just as the tension began to ease, a new sound echoed from outside the sealed doors. The old moon bell rang once more, and this time it was followed by Lady Vespera's voice, cold and clear even through the thick stone. "The trial is not over, Your Majesty. The moon has only just begun to speak." Thorne's golden eyes darkened. He looked down at Liora. "They're not finished with us yet." Liora met his gaze, exhausted but unbroken. Then we faced them together. Outside the chamber, the sound of many footsteps approached, and inside, the moon chamber remained silent as if it was waiting to see what would happen next. The moon chamber remained silent after Thorne spoke, but the world outside had not. Heavy footsteps echoed through the stone corridors beyond the sealed doors. Many of them. The sound of armored boots and the low murmur of voices grew louder with every passing second. The temple was no longer sending small groups. They were coming in force. Inside the chamber, the silver light had dimmed, but it had not disappeared. It still lingered around Liora and Thorne like a watchful presence, as if waiting to see what they would do next. Liora leaned against Thorne, her body exhausted from resisting the chamber's pull. The silver crescent beneath her sleeve had stopped burning, but it still felt warm against her skin. She looked up at him, her voice quiet but steady. "They're coming for me." Thorne's golden eyes were hard as he stared at the sealed doors. "They can come," he said, "but they will not take you." Liora studied his face. There was no hesitation in his voice anymore. The man who had once allowed the court to sever her wings was gone. In his place stood someone who was finally willing to stand against his own people for her. She spoke again, softer this time. "Your wolf is still alive because I'm here. If they force me into the trial alone, it may die." Thorne's jaw tightened. He could feel his wolf's shallow breathing through the bond. It was clinging to life, but only barely. Every minute Liora remained separated from it, the bond grew weaker. He looked down at her. "I will not let them separate us again." Outside the chamber, the footsteps stopped. A voice rang out the elder counselors, cold and formal. "Alpha King Thorne Blackthorn. By order of the Old Moon Law and the Council of Elders, you are commanded to release the accused and open the moon chamber. The trial must continue without interference." Thorne did not move. The elder continued. "If you continue to defy the law, the court will have no choice but to declare you unfit to rule. The packs will be informed. Blood may be shed." Lady Vespera's voice followed, smoother and more dangerous. "Your Majesty, think carefully. The widow has already been marked by the trial. If you stand with her now, you stand against the moon itself. Is one grieving woman worth the stability of your kingdom?" Thorne's voice was low, but it carried through the stone. "She is not one grieving woman," he said. "She is the only reason my wolf is still breathing, and I will not hand her over to a law that has already decided she is guilty." There was a long silence outside. Then the elder spoke again, his tone colder than before. "So be it. We will break the seal." A low, rhythmic chanting began outside the doors. The silver light inside the chamber reacted immediately, flaring brighter as the elders worked to force the doors open from the outside. Liora looked up at Thorne. Her voice was quiet but clear. "They will not stop. Even if you stand with me, they will keep coming." Thorne looked down at her. For a moment, the weight of everything pressed down on him: the dying wolf, the divided court, the temple's power, and the woman in his arms who had already suffered too much because of him. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. "Then let them come." He gently helped Liora stand on her own and stepped in front of her, facing the sealed doors. His sword was still sheathed, but his stance made it clear he was ready to fight if needed. Liora placed a hand on his arm. Thorne. He turned slightly to look at her. She met his gaze without fear. I did not ask for any of this, she said, but I will not run from it either. If they want to judge me, then let them judge me while I stand beside the one person who finally chose to protect me. Thorne studied her face. The woman who had once been dragged into his hall as a grieving widow now stood with quiet strength, even as the entire court moved against her. He reached out and gently touched her cheek. I should have chosen you the night my wolf first reached for you, he said. I was a coward then. I will not be one again. The silver light in the chamber pulsed once, as if acknowledging his words. Outside, the chanting grew louder. Cracks began to appear along the edges of the sealed doors. The elders were forcing the chamber open. Liora's silver crescent mark suddenly flared beneath her sleeve. She pressed her hand against it and looked at Thorne. They're breaking through. Thorne drew his sword. The sound of steel leaving its sheath echoed through the chamber. Then we meet them together. He turned to face the cracking doors, placing himself between Liora and whatever was coming. His voice was calm but carried the full weight of his authority. Whatever happens when these doors open, he said. You stay behind me. Liora stepped closer to him instead of moving back. She placed one hand on his back, right over where the bond with his wolf lived. I will not hide behind you, she said quietly. Not anymore. Thorne glanced back at her, and for the first time, a small, genuine smile touched the corner of his mouth. Then stand with me. The cracks along the doors grew wider. Silver light from inside the chamber mixed with the darker energy the elders were using to break the seal. The air grew heavy with power. Liora looked at the doors, then at Thorne. No matter what they say, she said, I did not come here to become Luna. I only came because I was commanded. But if standing beside you means I must face their judgment, then I will face it. Thorne reached back and took her hand without looking away from the doors. You are not facing it alone. The doors finally gave way with a loud, cracking sound. Silver and dark light exploded into the chamber as the elders and temple guards forced their way inside. And standing at the front of them, with cold eyes and a small, satisfied smile, was Lady Vespera. She looked directly at Liora and spoke. The moon has called you, widow. Now it is time to answer. The moon chamber doors had been forced open, but the silver light inside had not faded. It still surrounded Liora and Thorne like a protective veil, separating them from the group that had just entered. Lady Vespera stood at the front, flanked by the elder counselor and several temple guards. Her crimson robes were slightly disheveled from the effort of breaking the seal, but her expression remained composed and dangerous. She looked directly at Liora. The moon has called you, widow. Now it is time to answer. Liora stood tall despite her exhaustion. Thorne's arm remained around her waist, supporting her. His dying wolf was still outside the chamber, barely clinging to life. Through the bond, Thorne could feel every shallow breath it took. He stepped forward slightly, placing himself between Liora and Vespera. The trial is over, he said. My wolf has already chosen. Vespera's smile was small and cold. Your wolf is dying, Your Majesty, and it chose a woman who has already buried one mate. Do you truly believe this is fate, or do you believe she has used some widow's curse to twist your bond? Liora's voice rose, quiet but clear. I did not twist anything. Your wolf came to me because it was dying, and it only breathes when I am near. If you truly cared about your king, you would not be trying to separate them. Vespera's eyes narrowed. You speak as if you understand the sacred bond. You are wolfless. You have no right to speak of such things. Thorne's voice cut through the tension. She may not have a wolf of her own, he said, but she has kept mine alive when no one else could. That is more than enough. The elder counselor stepped forward, his expression grim. The Moonblood trial has rules, Your Majesty. Once invoked, it must be completed. If you interfere, the court will see it as corruption of the sacred law. Thorne looked at the elder without fear. "Then let the court see, because I will not stand by while you use old law to destroy the only person who can save my wolf." The silver light in the chamber pulsed once, as if responding to his words. Lady Vespera's voice turned sharper. "You are making a mistake. If you continue to protect her, the Pax will rebel. They will not follow a king who chooses a grieving widow over the strength of the noble houses." Liora spoke again before Thorne could answer. "I never asked to be chosen," she said. "I never wanted a crown. I came here because your court commanded it, and now you punish me for something I never asked for." She looked directly at Vespera. "You call my grief a curse, but my grief did not kill your king's wolf. It is the only thing keeping it alive." The silver light suddenly flared brighter. It wrapped around Leora's body and lifted her slightly off the ground. Her silver crescent mark burned beneath her sleeve, glowing so brightly that it could be seen through the fabric. The light around her began to take shape, forming the faint outline of wolf ears and a tail in her shadow. Gasps came from the temple guards outside the chamber. Vespera took an involuntary step back. Thorne stared at Liora in awe. Through the bond, he could feel his wolf react strongly, its heartbeat strengthening for the first time in months. Leora's voice came out clear and powerful. "I am not wolfless," she said. "I carry the Widow Moon gift, a power born only in those who have survived true heartbreak. I took your wolf's wound into myself years ago, and I have carried it ever since." The silver light around her pulsed again. Thorne felt the truth of her words through the bond. His wolf was no longer just surviving because she was near. It was healing because she was choosing to stand with it. Vespera's face had gone pale. "This is forbidden," she hissed. "This power should have died with the old bloodlines. You are an abomination." Liora met her gaze without fear. "I am the only reason your Alpha King still has a wolf." Thorne stepped forward, placing himself between Liora and Vespera once more. His voice was cold and commanding. "Enough. The trial is over. My wolf has chosen, and the moon has confirmed it. Liora Vale is under my protection. Anyone who tries to harm her will answer to me." Vespera's eyes burned with hatred. "You are dooming this kingdom." Thorne's voice did not waver. "I am saving it." The silver light in the chamber suddenly flared one last time, and then slowly faded. The heavy doors unlocked and swung open on their own. Outside, Thorne's black wolf was lying on the stone floor, barely moving. But when Liora stepped out of the chamber, the wolf lifted its head, its golden eyes focused on her, and its breathing steadied almost immediately. The court that had gathered outside stared in stunned silence. Lady Vespera stood frozen in the doorway of the moon chamber, her carefully constructed mask finally cracking. Thorne turned to face the gathered nobles and temple members. His voice carried across the hall. "My wolf has chosen its mate. The moon has confirmed it. Anyone who wishes to challenge that will do so knowing they stand against both their king and the will of the moon." He looked down at Liora, who stood beside him with quiet dignity despite her exhaustion. Liora met his gaze and gave a small nod. Thorne turned back to the court. "The moon blood trial is over. Liora Vale is no longer on trial. She is under my protection, and anyone who moves against her moves against me." The hall remained silent, but in the eyes of many, something had shifted. Lady Vespera slowly stepped out of the moon chamber. Her expression was calm once more, but her eyes were filled with cold fury. She looked at Liora one last time and spoke softly. "This is not over, widow." Then she turned and walked away, her temple guards following behind her. Thorne watched her go, then looked down at Liora. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. Liora gave a small, tired nod. "I am still here." Thorne gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You were never just a widow to me," he said. "Not after tonight." Liora looked up at him. There was still pain in her eyes, But there was also something new, the beginning of trust. Outside the chamber, Thorne's wolf slowly pushed itself up and walked toward them on unsteady legs. It stopped beside Liora and pressed its head against her hand. She placed her palm on its fur. Thorne watched them, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something close to peace. But he knew this peace would not last. Lady Vespera would not give up so easily, and the court was still divided. Still, as he stood beside Liora with his wolf at her side, Thorne made a silent vow. He would protect her, no matter what came next.